Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, inshallah, in the Tarsier lesson, we will be taking a word from one of the verses in the Quran. Inshallah, it is verse 25 of Surah Al-Baqarah, and we will be focusing on a specific word from the beginning of this verse. The verse says, "Give good news, O Prophet, to those who believe and do good, that they will have gardens under which rivers flow." The word that Allah Azza wa Jal used to describe the first part, "Give good news, O Prophet," Allah Azza wa Jal used the word "wabashir." That is the word that we will be focusing on today, inshallah. And to understand why Allah Azza wa Jal used this word specifically, as Allah Azza wa Jal chooses the best words to describe any idea that He's trying to relate onto us for us to understand it. In order to understand why Allah Azza wa Jal used this word, we have to look on the verse before it. Right in the verse before this one, Allah Azza wa Jal was challenging the disbelievers who claim that the Quran is man-made, that Prophet Muhammad wrote it, or that he's a magician and it's kind of spell that makes people believe in whatever he's saying. So Allah Azza wa Jal in the verse right before it was challenging the disbelievers who support this claim and saying, if so, create a couple of verses that are similar to the Quran, create a chapter similar to it. And if you are not going to do this, Allah Azza wa Jal promised them punishment and promised them heavy punishment. And right after this verse, the first thing that Allah Azza wa Jal talks about is, "O Prophet, give good news to the believers who believe and do good, and that they will have gardens which rivers flow under." Allah Azza wa Jal often puts the comparison between the believers and the disbelievers. It is a kind of compare and contrast text structure. Allah Azza wa Jal, whenever He mentions something about the disbelievers, right after it He mentions what the believers will have opposing it. If Allah Azza wa Jal mentions that the disbelievers are going to have heavy punishment, Allah Azza wa Jal then mentions that the believers are going to have a really good time in Jannah, inshallah. And if Allah Azza wa Jal mentions the behavior of the disbelievers, right after it, Allah Azza wa Jal mentions the actions of the believers. And the word "wabashir" can be used in both contexts. As Allah Azza wa Jal used it in this verse to describe what the believers in Allah Azza wa Jal would get, in other verses He described it as a promise or as a threat to the disbelievers, giving them the news and giving them the promise of what they will get. In Surah Al-Tawbah, verse number 3, near the end of the verse, Allah Azza wa Jal says, "And give news, O Prophet, to the disbelievers of a painful punishment." In the same verse, the same way Allah Azza wa Jal uses it to give the promise to the disbelievers that they will have a heavy punishment. But the word "wabashir" doesn't only come in this way. The root word for the word "bashir" itself often refers to the word "bashar" or "bashar." The first word "bashar" refers to the skin of a human being. And the second one, "bashar," refers to the human being himself. And the word "bashir" as a root word describes something that is obvious, something that is apparent. And the word "wabashir," in like the Arabic slang of how Arabs mostly used it, is to refer to good news. When someone is approaching you with a cheerful face, with a lightful face, he looks happy and he looks cheerful, you feel like he's coming with good news. So Arabs, when they see someone approaching like this, they would say, "Bashir." What is the news? What is the good news that you are bringing? Because his face tells me what he is about to bring, good news. And it was also described to describe the skin of human beings and the human beings themselves, because it is something apparent right in front of you. That is something you can see. And Allah Azza wa Jal uses it to describe things that are apparent, as this word is used for. Good news to the believers, it is something obvious. Bad news to the disbelievers, it is something also apparent. But Allah Azza wa Jal has used it in 4 different ways. The second one, as I just said, the first one is to give good news to the believers, and the second one is to give bad news to the disbelievers. But Allah Azza wa Jal also used it to describe wind a couple of times. One of which is in Surah Al-A'raf, verse number 57. Allah Azza wa Jal says in the beginning of it, "He is the one who sends the wind, ushering in His mercy." The word Allah Azza wa Jal used for that was translated into ushering, Allah Azza wa Jal also used the word "bushra." And Allah Azza wa Jal, as this word is used to describe news, whether if it's good or bad, Allah Azza wa Jal also used it to describe, through the angels sent to Prophet Ibrahim when they were meeting him one time. Allah Azza wa Jal used it to describe the meeting between them, that they gave good news to Prophet Ibrahim that inshallah he will have a child, Ishaq. So Allah Azza wa Jal can use this word in many ways, as Allah Azza wa Jal chooses these words in the best way possible, chooses the best words to describe to us any idea that it's trying to relate onto us. This word could be used in many ways, and these are the ways that Allah Azza wa Jal has used them in the Quran.